know a little bit of their context and their background, and tell a little bit. Most people want to know, and you do these all the time, so you know better than I do, but most people want to know what it was like. What was it like to have your home bombed and your children's lives threatened? This is that young family. Can I pass this around?
Oh, yeah.
Make sure we get it back. But that's them as young people with their young family, right?
Yeah.
And then this is Reverend Graetz now. So you can, that was this past January.
January 1st.
So he's not able to travel out of the home as often as he used to.
He's in a wheelchair now, and last May he survived 2 surgeries that would have taken somebody else. And wouldn't have lived through it. But he's going to be 90 years old in May. And so he survived it, and he is working hard to be able to walk again. He can walk with hanging on to a walker, and he took about 60 steps today with a wheelchair behind him so he could sit down at the time. But he is a miracle, and he always has been a miracle. And when he was, anybody here 20 years old, in sophomore in college?
Anybody 20?
That's right.
Sort of, yeah. Well, that was when he got a message from the Lord to go into working with black people. And he was going to write a paper about discrimination against Jews, because he knew about Jews because he went to school with them. The schools were segregated, and back in the 40s, they did not talk about what was going on in the world. And when he started to write this paper about the discrimination, he found out stuff that he hated himself for not knowing. And the Lord, what he calls his awakening, that he was supposed to be working with black people to make things better. And as a junior in college, he started a race relations club. This is in Columbus, Ohio, Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. He started a race relations club. He joined the NAACP. This was 1948. This was a long, long time ago. He became a captain to get everybody else to become NAACP members. And he started working against the people at the head of the college, because he didn't think they were noticing what was going on. And so he kind of got he was known as a rabble-rouser. So, well, we worked with a congregation, a black congregation in Columbus, Ohio, and when, the Lutheran church, you go 4 years college, and you have 4 years seminary, and the 3rd year you go off and work with another pastor someplace. Well, the congregation that wanted him was out in California, and they didn't have a pastor, so he was the pastor. He had a woman who worked with as I can't pull that word in either. They helped with Sunday school programs and things like that, but he was there 2 years. So he kind of got his feet wet. We lived in integrated communities in Columbus and then here out in California. And then when we came to Montgomery, things were really different. I mean, we knew about segregation, we've heard about it and everything, but to come to Columbus, to come to Montgomery, and it was the law. Segregation was the law, and that was the first shock that we ran into. So we decided we're not gonna do that. We never went to the restaurants. We would not do anything that our parishioners and our friends could not do. We did not go to get on the bus. We did not go to the library. Of course, we didn't go to swimming pools or any of those things. We refused to do it. But we were not segregated in our home and in our church. And one of the fun things is that, everybody thinks that we were the only white people involved. But we found out soon after we got here that there was kind of an underground group called the Montgomery Council on Human Relations that involved quite a few Jewish people, some white people, and some black people, and we all kind of were working for the same thing. One thing I didn't tell you, that when we came, when we got the call to come to Alabama, they knew about his background, and he had been helping with our Columbus, our congregation in Los Angeles is where Watts is now. I mean, it was not known as Watts at that time, but it was starting to change, and Bob was involved with quelling some riots that happened and all that. So they knew in Columbus, the higher-ups knew that he was kind of known as a rabble-rouser or something like that. They made him promise, but he went down there not to start trouble. Well, he didn't start the trouble, he just joined the trouble. He'd only been in Montgomery for 6 months before the bus boycott started. But anyway, we did not practice segregation in our home, and I'll tell you some of the things that we did. And there's a picture in here that shows the only integrated swimming pool in Alabama. And it was in our backyard. We had to corral our little kids, because we came down with 2. We had 3 more while we were here, and then we had 2 more after we went to another black congregation back in Columbus, Ohio. But anyway, the swimming pool was a big tractor tire. You put a tarpaulin in it and fill it with water. And I'm not sure you know how hot it gets here in Alabama in the summertime. So this was a nice place to come and splash, and especially the little kids. But even the big kids, they want to see what was going on over here. Who's that white family over here? They seem so nice and friendly. But anyway, we had great times. We had, I kind of inaugurated little birthday parties and popcorn parties and things to get together with the parents, or mostly the women. We had a lot of things that kind of, meetings and things like that involved the whole families. But that was one of the things that I really liked to do. But you ask how you feel about things like that. Well, we have always been lovers. I mean, we love people and they love us. But come down there and find out that they're Klan people that hated us and actually were very intent on making us go back where we belong, we were traitors to the white race. We were communists. We were northern agitators, and they let us know that they did not want us around, and they phoned us and they wrote letters to us and went by the house and threw rocks up on the house, and you hear bump, 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 bump on the roof, and you don't know whether it's what it is, whether it's a bomb. And so there were scary times, but we decided not to let them intimidate us. I thought that was all they were going to do. They bombed our house one time while we were gone. We have a Highlander Folk School, and if you don't know about that, that's another good thing to check up on, because that's working way back in the 1920s. They started resisting the things that were going on. But anyway, it was not nice to feel hated. And after the big bombing that most people know about happened after the bus boycott was over. They were so angry that supposedly now they're going to make you integrate the schools and desegregate all these things, and they wanted to get after somebody. And that night, 7 men from Selma, they had bombed different places before, and were involved with all kinds of Ku Klux Klan stuff. And they came by at 2 o'clock in the morning, and our house was the first one they bombed. The first bomb that was thrown had 11 sticks of dynamite, a container of TNT, and 2 lit fuses. And the only reason we're all alive was that the Lord did not let that one go. And the demolitions people said just throwing it should have made it go off, because TNT is very volatile, and just the bumping of it should have made it go off. And we know the Lord just took care of us. We felt this is one of the things that kept us going, is that we knew the Lord had sent us. We knew the Lord was going to take care of us. But it was a shock, because our fourth child was 9 days old. So here were these 4 babies in the house, and the fact that the bomb was supposed to kill us all, that was the hardest thing that I had to believe. Well, they came back and threw a bomb that was supposed to go to another church at the house to make the big one go off. And this one landed up near the house, right in front of the house. And the other one had landed on the driveway, which sloped down. So what they figured was that the blast of it went over above the other bomb, and that big one did not go off. They did a lot of damage to the house. They lifted the roof and tore the doors off, and broke the windows, and all the nasty things that happen when you get your house bombed. But it took me a long time. We knew I'll go ahead and say, they captured these 7 people. There were 4 churches that were bombed, and Abernathy's parsonage and our parsonage were the ones that got bombed. They captured these guys, and they found all kinds of evidence that the police had been gathering and really did a good job. They did a good job of it. But they had a jury trial. The jury consisted of 12 white men, and they very shortly exonerated everybody. Nobody got punished for it, except I know the Lord punished them. But I had a very hard time forgiving this guy. We knew who this man was who had thrown the bomb to kill us. He was 19 years old. And he had 3 names. And if you ever look through the papers or things that are going on, you'll find out what his name was. He put it on a bail bond, whatever you call it, business. Right next door to the First Baptist Church, which was one of the churches that was bombed, with his name on it. So for many years, we brought groups like yours down here as pilgrimages before we moved back here. And every time we went by there, I just, even though I said, Lord, help me to forgive him, those things just came right back to me. And I finally had to, forgiveness is something that helps the person that does the forgiving. That's it may not help that other person that you forgave, but I decided I had to do something about it. And so I prayed about this and I said, okay, I need the Lord to take this away from me, because it was not good for me to be bothered every time we went by there. And so I said, okay, I'm going to make a sign of the cross. I'm going to pray for you, this guy. And it just left, the whole business left me, and I had laughter. The Lord gave me laughter every time we went by there. You can't do that to me anymore. I'm not going to let you. But one of the other things that people ask me is, weren't you afraid? And there were many times there were things really scary. And Bob had it more than I did, because he was out all the time with things that were going on and people following in the car, and we had our car vandalized, we had tires slashed and sugar in the gas tank, and people just telling him what he was. They didn't like what he was doing, and that kind of stuff. And he was working with the bus boycott. And in fact, the day after it started, he was out driving people to work, and then they gave him a job of, well, I don't call it a job, but an assignment to which hours he would work, would do it. But anyway, one of the blessings that we were given was that we were accepted, and we never felt like we were different, and people liked us. And we were asked one time, how do you like being a pariah? Well, I don't know. I didn't know what it was. Do you know what a pariah is? Somebody who is not accepted. I mean, that's a good way to put it. And we never felt that way. We felt we were loved. And of course, one of the big things that Dr. King preached on and worked on, and the reason that the bus boycott worked was this whole idea of nonviolence. It just didn't happen anywhere else. You know, you get hit and you will hit back, or you, we did not have money, we did not have any way to make the bus boycott work. And I know that the Lord gave him, with help from, what's the name of it? There were, you know, Bayard Rustin that worked with, you know, just a peace group anyway.
Oh, Fellowship of
Yeah,
Reconciliation.
Fellowship of Reconciliation, thank you. And other people that said, you know, we can't fight with guns, and we don't have guns, and we don't have any way to protect ourselves. The Lord's got to protect us. And that's the way we worked. And people came from all over the world to see how come this worked. One of the reasons is we worked together, 50,000 black people and others who were involved, working together. And one of the funny things that came out of that, people say, well, I don't think black people could work together in any place besides the graveyard. But people were so excited about the first day of the boycott. People stayed off the buses. And you know about the mass meetings that we held, first of all, twice a week, because you couldn't get all the people in one place to talk about what was going on and tell people what was happening. And, you know, we walked and we did this, and the powers that be tried to arrest us and all these things that were going on. And people got up, and it was almost like a when you testify in a church service, and these were church services. People get up and tell them what happened, and it worked one day at a time, and that was one of the things that really kept this whole thing going. And one thing that I want to be sure and tell you is that we all know that civil rights is not just for black and white. And so we have worked with a lot of groups that were not, you know, voting problems with, but one of the first things we worked with women's rights, because, you know, now it's coming back all over again. But the bus boycott was really the men. The men were the ones that directed things, and there were a few women that were involved, but it was really the men. And the women were supposed to take care of the food and maybe be a secretary or something like that, but you can't. They couldn't make decisions. So this was one of the first things, and we worked with our denomination accepting women in the pulpit. You know, back in those days, those were things that didn't happen, at least in the Lutheran church. And in some of the Lutheran churches, we are ELCA, in case we're not the kind that don't allow women. And then, of course, the big thing was allowing gays in the pulpit. This was another big thing. He worked with handicapped groups. One of them, and we worked in Appalachia for many years after, well, we kept moving, and back in the 70s, early 70s, Bob accepted the job of working with the Ohio Council of Churches. And one of the big things, overall things that we've worked with is poverty. And that was one of the reasons he accepted that, because working again, trying to get laws changed about poverty. And he worked with them for 13 years. And it was almost like nothing much changed. And they say, well, poor people don't vote. You gotta have the votes, and you gotta have the money. And the Ohio Council of Churches was not, they did not have, most people have, who are working with the legislatures, have money to say, make this bill. But Ohio Council of Churches was not allowed to use money to influence. So that was kind of hard for him, because he's used to being involved in so many things. But anyway, I'll see if there are questions you want. I don't know what you want to know.
In terms of family, I'm a very family-oriented guy, so I was wondering how it is that you have to deal with, like, in terms of like your parents, how they saw your work and your husband's, and also how it is that you managed to educate those that came after you, your children, your grandchildren. I want to hear more about that.
That's a big question. Let me start out by saying all of our children have been advocates for justice. And our oldest daughter, who remembers a lot that happened in Montgomery, has moved back to Montgomery, and she's been here 3 years now, and she's kind of taken our place. Well, all this is, health-wise, we couldn't do very much. Working with LGBT groups and all of our other children are involved in some way. We taught them what we grew up with. You be kind to one another and you be fair. And we're very grateful that they have followed in the things that we believe. Didn't quite answer your question, did I?
No, you did.
What about your other family members, sisters and brothers and cousins? Did they think you guys were crazy?
Oh, yeah. we found that you could influence your family by being yourself and introducing your mates and your grandchildren and it's very interesting that we had one cousin who, when our son died, they were so upset with us for accepting him and all that they couldn't even tell us that they were, we're sorry that you're grieving, anything like that. And, very prejudiced against all kinds of things. Well, they have 4 children, and one of them married a black lady, a real sweet black lady, one of them is gay. And I said, okay. And they love one another. It just takes a little bit of getting to know everybody else. And I'm always delighted to see you guys all different. And I hope you get to know one another, because that's going to save the world. One of the things that we all know now that, well, we knew about it before, but the last few years when they're talking about the DNA, and they're saying, oh, well, we're all the same. We knew this before. We always knew that the blood was the same. And it's because we're all mixed up. We are all mixed up. And starting from way back in Africa, where we all started, and people moved around and mixed us all up. And so you can't, we talk about race. Well, there's no such thing as race. We have a little acronym that we put on the board for some of our younger kids. This acronym, RACE. Here's a new way to look at that. Respect all cultures equally. And do that, we're not going to have these wars and stuff. Yeah.
So clearly your children didn't have like a normal childhood, especially while they were in Montgomery, and they grew up to be such wonderful activists. But do you think, or do you know if there was ever a time when your kids were younger that they maybe resented not having that normal childhood? Or were they always just gung-ho about this?
Oh, they've always, they grew up this way. And it was the first 10 years, they were always, they were the neighborhood kids and all that. And we went to Washington, D.C., where our kids, Carter High School, 3,000 kids, and our kids were the only ones. We had kids in 3 schools. Across the street was Whittier Elementary, 3,000 kids. There was one other white family, a couple kids in there, but our kids were bigger and had never been in a place where they were singled out. So they kind of learned what discrimination was all about. They knew by hearing about it, they kind of had to get over it. But they had an interesting time in D.C.
You said that God called Reverend Graetz at 20. How did he convince you to go along with that calling?
Well,
was he just so darn handsome that you thought, okay,
we had,
did you just look into those eyes and go, okay, let's go, Bobby, I'm ready.
February 12th, 1950, we had our first date, a Luther League retreat, and we talked every chance we got to talk about it, to each other, and just get to know each other. We found out we had the same ideas about things, and both of us kind of decided after that first date that this is the one. And we have been married now. On June 10th, we'll be married 67 years. I'll say it wrong. But that is one of the things. We know the Lord put us together. And right now, where I am a 24-hour caregiver, I am the most important person in his life.
When you met Reverend Graetz, what things were you interested in upon meeting him? We know he was in seminary, right?
Uh-huh.
And what were you went to the same college, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and what were you interested in part of? What organizations or special gifts?
When I first met him, we were working in a newspaper together, and he invited me to that. But I was always, education was my big thing, and it still is. I hope some of you are going into education. All right. We need this smart, intelligent, caring people in education. These kids need you so badly to start right in little tiny kids. I graduated in 2015. We came back to Columbus as an invitation to help celebrate the 50th anniversary of the bus boycott. And they said, you come, we'll put you up in the faculty housing, and you help us during the year. Well, then we've always talked about retiring, but retirement comes very hard for a pastor. And we kept doing things and going to different places. But we decided, as long as we're going to be here, I'm going to go back to school, because I had finished 2.5 years way back then. Well, of course, they're not going to accept a lot of those credits, so I really had to work. And I graduated magna cum laude. Wow. I'm so glad you are all working now, and don't stop and wait all those years, because you have to work harder. You have to put twice as much effort in it. And of course, one of my things too, you know about, you grew up with a computer and everything. Well, this professor that I took a computer class from, he said, yeah, you all who grew up with this, you're the natives. And the rest of you are immigrants. You gotta learn. You gotta learn what all the rest of them know already. So that was one of my big things I had to learn.
And by the way, we went to her alma mater. She graduated here at Alabama.
Yeah,
Yes.
Alabama State, yeah.
That's exciting.
Okay, I have 2 questions. The first one's really quick. What did you study, or what did you get your degree in at Alabama State?
Elementary education.
Okay, awesome. My second question is, so you talked about making the decision of like continuing with your work even though you were receiving those threats. Was that an easy decision for you and your husband to make, or was there a lot of hesitation involved? And then after you made that decision, did you ever think about going back and turning back, or did you just keep pressing?
No, we knew what we were supposed to do, and at every point, one of the things that we have done, and I don't know if this sounds Pollyannish or something, but when we make decisions, we do them together, but we make a chart. And you hear the pros for this, and you hear the cons about, where we're going to go, or what we're going to buy, or, all these things. And the Lord always directs what we should do. You think about it, and then this is it. Yeah, this is what we're supposed to do.
Well, we have another. If not, can we pause a moment? And I want to make sure that, because I know they have an early morning, the restaurant, because they're open in the morning for business, for lunch, and they'll be in early cooking. So we'll let you take a breath.
Okay.
And we'll move to Dr. Montgomery. And then at the end, if you have any additional questions for Mrs. Graetz, you can ask those, okay? But she's been standing now for a while, and I want to let her sit and take a breath.
Yeah, my 88
She's 88 years young. 88 years young. So I'm going to make sure she takes a breath for a moment and let Dr. Montgomery tell us a little bit about what it was like to have just a neighbor.
Okay, well,
Being a college professor, I don't get tired. I can get 2 hours stint, but I'm not going to tonight. So let me first start off like I usually do when I give this kind of talk and ask you, what significant event happened on December 1st, 1955?
Your birthday.
Oh, me too.
You've been here before.
You were there before. But usually the question comes up, Rosa Parks, all
Yeah,
of the
that's
above. And I'll tell them, no, something more important than that, and it was about me. It was my birthday. I was 8 years old. And of course, being 8 and it's your birthday, you're thinking all of this hoopla and excitement in the air. It's all about you. You know, they're planning a party, whatever the case may be. Only to find out, no, this is not about you. This is about the birth of something much larger than you, which was the birth of the modern civil rights movement. I say that this time I'm going to be flip-flopping because I'm piggybacking off a lot of the questions that you asked and a lot of the responses that she gave you, because of the fact that when she's speaking in terms of a child, of children, that's why I wrote the book, because I'm the child. I'm the child watching all of this. You asked a question, somebody back there asked a question about what did your children think, or did you make a decision to do that? And just watching these adults, they didn't make the decisions, it just had to be done. There was nothing about going backwards. It was always about moving forward to reach this particular goal. And by watching them, as she mentioned about the children, when you asked that question about did you teach your children, you don't have to teach them. They're watching, you set the example. So we are watching the adults make this move. Be courageous. You have no choice except to go along. I know you didn't think you were going to say, I refuse to go along with you. No, that wasn't going to happen. But you're watching these people. You're watching them go through bombings. You're watching them be defiant, not in a negative way. I mean, just defiant for the law. You're watching the people go into protests, organized protests, into meetings. This was not a reactionary event, it was a responsive event. And the difference between those two is reactionary is just that. You're going to react, that's violence. The responsorial way was more thoughtful. You have to plan. That's one of the things we worry about young people today when they're wanting to plan. And what do I do? Because trust me, as a young person growing up through that, I'm growing through it, feeling that same thing all over again. That was the reason to write the book, because I wanted people to understand children were alive during this. We watched all this. We had to live through all of this. And in my case, I lived through the 3 major events. As Ray said today, we had the bus boycott, then we had to go through the Freedom Riders, then we had to go through the Selma Montgomery March, and I'm growing up as all of this is going from the time I'm 8, you know, having a happy-go-lucky life playing until the bomb goes off at the King Parsonage, you know, during the boycott time, and your whole life changes. That's the end of that. You know, now it's, you become a little protester, okay? It was 4 of us all together. I'm second in line. But you become that protester, and you're watching. And I mean, I'm serious. They were just to watch it. I can't explain it because I feel it in me. You know, you're wondering, who are you at this point? You're asking yourself, who am I? Where did I get this drive from? And it comes from those people that have gone, you know, before you. You can't explain it other than that. It's in you. You can fight it all you want to, but as you said, it's God-driven. It's just in you. But giving you a little background on the experiences of that time, as you said, with the boycott, we had to go through the bombings as well. It was an amazing thing to see 50,000 people just stick together like this. Much of the people that you read about with the boycott, along with Reverend Graetz and those, the King family, the Abernathy family, Miss Georgia Gilmore, Rufus Lewis, Aurelia Browder, Johnny Carr, I know I'm missing somebody. All those people live right there in Centennial Hill where you were. Right there, I mean, in walking distance, marker after marker after marker after marker after marker. Okay, so these are the people that stuck together. Another thing was people would ask, students would ask, was there that divide, you know, the divide in the black community? And I tell them no. You know, the struggle wasn't about socioeconomics. The struggle was about black and white. The law itself, equality, justice. Money could not buy you a ticket, a seat on that bus. I don't care how much money you had, you couldn't sit in front. You could not go to a restaurant, you couldn't go to a bathroom, you couldn't drink from this water fountain. So that had absolutely nothing to do with it. But the people that did have the means, you could see they were the ones that would help provide cars, provide the transportation, or whatever the case may be, whatever needs needed to be done. You could see that the community coming together. And I witnessed that at the age of 8. There was one friend of mine, peer friend of mine, that mentioned to me just recently. She said, you know, we're the last ones that can speak on this, about the boycott. And I said, you know, we're right. My age group is the last of the eyewitnesses of the boycott, okay? Nobody younger than me was there. They weren't born yet, so they can't speak about what they saw. And even those of us that are my age can only speak from that child's point of view. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's imperative that I tell you what I know. It really is, because otherwise you won't get it firsthand. You're going to get TV, movies, you're going to get Hollywood movies. When we look at them, we just cringe because we're seeing you miss one little part that destroys the entire story. And if you cringe while you're watching the movie, think of what it was like to really be here to witness this kind of thing, okay? As I said, bombings that would occur. That same night that she mentioned the bomb did not go off for the Graetz home, there was also a set of dynamite that was on the King's porch. Not the initial one that went off that did blow up his house, but another one. You saw where we live in comparison to that house. So if you get bombed, we get bombed, pretty much. We get the repercussions of that. That particular night, there were about 12 sticks of dynamite. Did not go off. We were staying next door, that big white house. I don't know if you pay any attention. That was my grandmother's house, and my sister and I were over there. And the bomb did go off across the street. There were plenty of houses across the street. Gentrification came and wiped out our neighborhoods, okay? Cab stand was across the street. One of the major cab stands that provided transportation for the riders was bombed. That did go off. Windows shattered all around me. I was, again, 8 years old. Windows are shattering all around me. So all I heard was glass breaking, 14 windows in that house. It took me a long time to get over the sound of breaking glass. Just really a long time to get over that. And that's what I meant when I said children are still stuck with this. There were no counselors, to help you to live with this. We all know how the boycott ended, so I won't go into that history. We pretty much know that. But fast forward through protests and sit-ins and all of that from Alabama State, and we're watching them. And you saw where Jackson Street is. You saw where Alabama State is. So they're marching in front of our house going downtown. So you're always seeing these protests and things that are going on. But we fast forward to 1961. I'm now 13, okay? May 13. I'm in the 8th grade. I'm supposed to be graduating from the 8th grade to go to high school. I'm all excited about this, okay? Freedom Riders come into the Greyhound bus station. That's John Lewis and all included. And I'm going to bring this up so we can talk about this as well. John Lewis and all included. You can look at it when you get through. They get into the Greyhound bus station. I think Dorothy Walker or Mary might have told you this. Did you all do the tour? Down there you just went through. So they may have given you that story of them coming down there and being so badly beaten at the Greyhound bus station by a mob. That same mob surrounded the church that night. They hid actually in choir robes so that they could mix in with the group in case the mob came through. They wouldn't be singled out, and picked out for whatever, because they wanted. That comes straight from Bernard Lafayette's and their mouths, Freedom Riders' mouths. At that time, there was only maybe about 17, 18 of them that came on that first bus. They were the ones that were so badly beaten. That same mob surrounded the church. You had about 1,500 people in the church, because this was a mass meeting. They were trying to prepare, where are we going to go from here to get prepared to go to Jackson, Mississippi, okay? So you're thinking about all this mob, they're out there ready to kill you, they're turning over cars, they've got all of these handmade weapons and sticks and all of these kinds of things. They're breaking the stained glass windows and all in the church. It's now the wee hours of the morning, these people are still trapped, they can't get out. So King calls Robert Kennedy, Attorney General, he federalizes the troops, brings now these people that are pointing guns, they're ready to hit you, now you've got to flip your hat because now you're the National Guard. So you got to come down and protect the same people you want to kill. Put them on the trucks in the wee hours of the morning and bring them to our house. Okay. My my sister and I are still trying to find out where was the communication to say, hey, why don't you pack up all these people and bring them into your house? We laugh about that because we said there's no cell phone. So who called who to say, hey, open the doors and let them all come in bleeding and battered, because that's exactly the way they came down the hallway. They came down the hallway tired, beaten, bloodied, battered, exhausted is the best word to use from the events of that day, okay? They stayed there with us for those 4 days. The question is always, how in the world did you feed all those people? They're like, that didn't happen. Y'all couldn't possibly have fed all of those people, because now when I say all those people, I mean the initial group. Then you got buses still coming with more Freedom Riders. When they find out where the safe haven is, they're coming too, along with the leaders that are there, because this is the place for everybody to be, along with the photographers and the videographers that we're finding out that was on the PBS special that my sister and I looked at and went, God, we didn't know all that was going on. Well, we're trying to live our everyday life. We're just going to school. But we were told not to open our mouths. We had no idea that Secret Service or some kind of security was trailing us to school. We didn't know FBI people were out there. All of this we are finding out literally within the past 5-6 years. When did the documentary come out? 2011, so 7 years. In 7 years, we're finding out just how serious this really was, okay? Well, my uncle had a restaurant, so that's how the food was provided. My dad was a pharmacist, so medical care was provided. If you got a chance to come into the house, you can see that my dad had a lunch counter in his original drugstore, and when he moved it, or rather when he changed it, he shut his lunch counter down when my uncle opened a restaurant right next door. Well, all of the fixtures that were in the lunch counter came into our kitchen. So we got the stools, we got the counter, we got the Coca-Cola box, we got the grill, it's all there. Easy to accommodate. The house itself, very large room. Had just been remodeled to that level, so you didn't have a lot of furniture to take up space. So very open space where the riders could come in and sit. And you see them upstairs in the room doing their strategy sessions, okay? On that, for me, at 13, these are young people coming from college, especially young college guys. They were so cute. That was just the only thing that I could think of was, oh my God, they are so cute. And they were coming from Fisk University, which was my dad's alma mater, which is where we were already programmed to go. So I'm looking at all of them. But you had John Lewis and Diane Nash and Bernard Lafayette and Hank Thomas, and it just goes on, the list goes on. And your leaders, James Farmer and who else?
Was Dave Dennis there?
Dave Dennis, yes, Dave Dennis. You had Bernard Lafayette, where was that with it? James Farmer, Joseph Lowry, Martin Luther King, Ralph Abernathy, A.D. King, C.T. Vivian, Fred Shuttlesworth, all of these people that are in doing these strategy sessions. For us, these were just the normal people that are always in and out of our house, ergo just a neighbor. You see what I'm saying? To us, it was normal, very, very, very normal. We had no idea that history was in the making. We had no idea these people were going to have their names on airports and on interstates and in books and in movies. That's when it became important to us. It was like, wait a minute, we know all of these people. For instance, the Tuskegee Airmen thing, my dad used to sing that Tuskegee Airmen song, the 99th and Red Tails, over and over and over again. That's how he met Mama. And we knew fight, 99. We knew that song, and meant nothing to us until the movie came out in the 90s with Lawrence Fishburne on HBO, and there's this picture at the end of the movie. And I'm like, this must have been a big deal. Well, I'm really learning now how to appreciate that, and I noticed that a lot of those that were Tuskegee Airmen, once they got out, especially the officers, became activists. So now it's no surprise to me that my dad was an activist. It is absolutely no surprise to me why he stood for equality and justice. He'd already been through that with that particular deal. But anyway, fast forward from there, 1963, I always like to bring this up, even though that was Birmingham. There was a young girl that I met on our way to Fisk in 1965. who happened to be in the church in 1963, the church bombing. And her name was Carolyn Ma McKinstry. And she had just left those girls down in the basement, went upstairs. She received a phone call that said, "You got 2 minutes." Within the 2 minutes' time, the bomb goes off, kills her friends, and all of the above. I say that to say that she wrote a book called While the World Watched. She and I meet each other on the train in '65 going up to Fisk University, and we are comparing notes on who had the most bombings. You know, well, we had bombings out down the street from Martin Luther King. Well, I was in the church, but we had this bombing. You know, it's almost like a one-upmanship, but who was the, hey, you know, understand this is the 60s as well. But as we got older, I'm fast-forwarding to now, because she wrote her book, and when I read her book, I told her, I said, I had no idea you were struggling like I was with all of that hidden, suppressed feelings that we've both been through. She actually turned into an alcoholic. Now, I'm not exposing anything that's not in her book. Because she likes to tell the story. And she had suicide attempts behind all of that because her friends were killed. And she said nobody ever talks beyond the 4 little girls of all of the people that have shrapnel still in them, you know, that are dealing with mental issues. Nobody talks about that part of the civil rights movement. You see what I'm saying? This is what we want you to get, the collateral damage people that go along with that. So anyway, for me, that was 63, but 65, 64, Civil Rights Bill is passed that summer, July. I'm about to go into my senior year. I already been elected to be president of the student council, you know, so I got a little clout. I can call friends, do this and the other. St. Jude High School, that was my school. We decided to test the waters. You know, the ink is not even dry yet on the bill. Like, okay, let's go. We're going to see where we're going to go. Because see, prior to that, segregation days, we used to send my little brother, who looked like he was white, and we would send him in there, go taste that water and tell us what it tastes like. Or go in there and buy us one of those cookies from here to there. Well, now we can actually test the waters because by law, you cannot stop us. So we go to the drive-in first, get into the drive-in, and mind you, by now, I'm a teenager and have been to mass meetings. I've learned how to do. We've learned how to fall. We learned how to march. We learned how many abreast you're supposed to be on a sidewalk, how many abreast you're supposed to be on the street within the law, do these kinds of things. So we're ready. We are ready to do whatever it is we need to do. Go to the drive-in, we sit in there. My little brother's sitting in the front under the steering wheel. Guys, a group of white guys come in and start beating up on him, all of the above. Well, we had some guys in our car too, so as soon as they opened the doors, these other guys left. But we weren't going to leave. So you just knew, you just have to kill us at this point. You really and truly do. That's your mindset. I am not going to let you drive me away from what's rightfully mine. I have a right to be here. The next thing we go to try to sit in at a little diner. It's about 5 of us going downtown. We sit on the stool and we get the usual, we don't serve this here, you know, the N word here. And we said, okay, that's fine. That's not what we plan to order. So we would just, and we waited until they called the police, and of course then we did leave, you know. But you just kept pushing the button, and there was somebody else, were you all scared at any point? And we would tell them no. I mean, that never throughout the entire civil rights movement did I ever feel fear, ever, 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 ever. And that's always the questions, well, weren't you scared at one point? And I tell them, no, and you're going to hear that answer from so many of us. No, it was just what needed to be done, and that you were like this thing inside of you that's driving you to continuously, you know, to move forward. 1965, I'm now in high school, all set and ready to graduate. I'm 18 this time, 17 rather, turning 18 that December. March, here comes Selma. All the people coming in, marching in from Selma. Well, prior to that famous photo, I don't have it on my phone, but I know you all have seen it. The famous photo of King and John Lewis and some other ministers, Albano, locked arm in arm, and you know they showed you were right there because you saw the Benmore Hotel. That photo's taken right in front of our house. And people say, well, did you see the march? I said, no, because I was at the back of it, marching with them. Because we were 12th grade. That by this time, we were going with the crowd. That was not the Selma to Montgomery March. That was the preliminary march. That would happen a week prior to that, to go to the courthouse for Frank Johnson to say, thumbs up, you're safe to go carry out your march. So that's what that was about, okay? But they push it as that. And those little things like that, we tell them they weren't in suits to come to march from Selma, you know, those little things like that. But nonetheless, at least it got people's attention. But when they came in from Selma, I did not march from Selma to Montgomery, but they came to our school, to the grounds at St. Jude High School. And so when they got there, we were out of school and we joined the march the next day to march with them downtown. But I still was down in the group because we wanted to see all these entertainers. John Baez and Sammy Davis Jr., you name it, they were there. They had a makeshift stage. And I remember being the height that I am now, okay, and I was trying to get through this crowd to get to the front. And you know how you say, excuse me, my brother's up there, excuse me. And while I'm trying to get to the front, okay, I'm at armpit level to these people that have just marched 45 miles, okay? And the next thing I know, somebody must have body surfed me out because I was on a brick wall, laid out, okay? But I say that to say, you don't think about these people. There were no cell phones, there were no Reebok shoes, nothing. Their feet were bloody. You know what I'm saying? They were marching for a purpose, determination. It was all about being determined to get what's rightfully ours. I mean, really, just driven by determination. But that next morning, of course, we all gathered, we got in the crowd, we all marched downtown, you know, for the official Montgomery portion of the Selma Montgomery March. So check that off. I've already done all of these things. Like you said, I get to Fisk, having a great time, all of the above, you know, Snickers on campus, hey, Black Power, you know, now we really getting not necessarily militant just yet. I'm on my way though, because April 4th, 1968, we got word that he had been assassinated. Now, mind you, this is like my uncle. I know him, okay? Watched him after he got stabbed with that letter opening, seen him with the gauze wrapped around him, all of this kind of growing up with hugging and all of this kind of stuff. I was living in a dorm on campus that sat on a corner. It was formerly a male dorm, but now it's a female dorm. And so we had access, you know, just to kind of go up and down. A group of us got onto the roof. That night, tear gas is everywhere. Nashville is exploding. The campus is exploding. We are on the roof and making Molotov cocktails. And I don't want to see a white person, period, because I have had it up to here with you people. Had it. That was the first time I had felt hate in my heart. Much like, you remember when Rodney King got killed and Reginald Denny, they yanked him out. They weren't after Reginald Denny. They were after what he symbolized, just a white guy that they just wanted to hurt. That's the only time in my life that I've ever felt pure hate. Just hate. You understand? And like Mrs. Graetz said, you just have to pray it away. You just really have to just pray all of that away, because that's just the way that it was. But we got all of that, you know, got over all of that, graduate, I get married, I move up to Maryland, to Suitland, Maryland, which is like that far from Laurel, Maryland in 1972. And then who's in Laurel, Maryland in 1972? George Wallace. Well, you know I've had my fill of George Wallace. Like, oh my God, I don't want to hear his name ever again, because he was just, ooh. We had to pass his house every day to go to school. More speeding tickets because they harassed us going back and forth to school. But anyway, and then he got shot. And I remember saying very clearly in my mind, good, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. Because you have caused so many people to die and get hurt. You understand? But like she said, you got to take it away from you. You know, you got to forgive yourself. And a lot of people would say, well, you know, maybe he had such a change of heart. Well, you would have changed your heart too if you got to depend on people to push you around. You see, I can't go with that one. Maybe I'm wrong for that, but I still don't think that. I really and truly don't think that. But that was just the way that things were. As far as what I do now, my thing is health disparities. Just always about the unevenness and inequality in your health care. But as far as teaching my children, as you can see, I got a son back in the back, I got a grandson right here. They are finally learning, just like we did, that, hey, what your parents did or your grandparents did really was a big deal. We just didn't think that it was a big deal. But I'm going to stop it at there and see if you got any questions, because I know we're pushed on time.
So you talked a little bit about even figuring out your own history decades after it happened, like especially like with your father and then seeing the Tuskegee Airmen movie. And so for the rest of us, we're kind of learning this history again decades after it happened, even years after we first kind of touched on it in school. And this is our first chance to really go in depth and see these things. And so what do you recommend is the best way for people our age to really, get to understand what really happened beyond just the big name?
I don't think you'll ever really understand. This is something you have to experience. You can learn everything that you need to learn. There was a group of young high school students, as a matter of fact, that came and we were talking with them. I forgot where they were from, but this one guy was just so filled with anger. And he said, he talked to me at the end, he said, I just don't know what to do. I'm so angry. And this was with the present administration, all of this stuff going on. And I said, you need to just change that word anger to passion. Don't lose the feeling. Switch the name. Because if you're angry, again, you're going to react. If you're passionate about something, you'll study it to find out how to change it. As far as understanding exactly what we went through, you'll never be able to walk in our shoes. Hopefully you never have to be able to walk in our shoes, ever, ever. But at the same time, you'll hear my generation especially, and some of Mrs. Graetz, but definitely my generation, because we were the fighters, the young people coming up. And we're seeing it all over again. And we're seeing it with having our grandson in particular and grandchildren. Not so much our children, but our grandchildren having to deal with this. Because like my son said to me, Mama, you didn't prepare us for this. He said, we didn't know anything, and that's because we thought we had it made. They have great friends. They were like this with their friends, integrated schools and all of the above. Then it turns right back around now, grandson, a different wave. And now he's got to learn all of this, That's the best way that I can answer that. For you, I think you're doing absolutely the right thing by going on these pilgrimages, listening to people, first-hand people, if you can take it, and watch documentaries versus movies, okay? Actually study the documentaries and make sure it's a quality one so that you can see. And that's the best way that you can learn about it. It's about like me trying to learn about slavery. I'll never understand what that was like. Hopefully I never will have to, but I can respect the courage that it took for these people, the strength that it must have taken, the resolve that it must have taken for those people, to endure that. Especially Harriet Tubman. She's just my idol. She really is. Really is. Anybody else? Question?
Now that I know you talked about writing your book, Just a Neighbor, looking back on it now and, talking to us and other people that you come into contact with, giving your firsthand knowledge of your experience, how does it make you feel knowing that your voice is finally out there about, firsthand experience of, Dr. King just being a neighbor and being like an uncle to you and, hearing the news of his assassination and, your relationship with him and his family and everybody else that was involved. So kind of, what are your emotions and your feelings as, a young African-American woman at the time and even now expressing yourself and, recollecting everything that happened?
Well, first it was just excitement. When I wrote the book, it was just exciting. Anybody wanted to buy the book? I don't hear anything I had to say. It was like, I just needed to get it on paper. I didn't even print but a few copies, and now it's in its sixth printing because it was in 2010, and I just, I just got it cathartic. It's on paper in the story. Here it is now, 2018, and now I feel that it's necessary for me to tell the story. Just like I mentioned in the beginning, it's necessary for me to answer any questions that you might have and tell you exactly how I felt. And now I'm looking at it as an adult, as a parent, as a grandparent, and looking at what I have done, would I have made those same choices that my parents had to make, those kinds of things. And that's what I feel now as a tremendous sense of responsibility to carry on for them to share. You know, it has absolutely nothing to do about fame or wealth. That's why when you said, can we videotape it? Yeah, it's a story. It belongs to you. You know, I can't make money off of what happened. That's not what it's all about. You know, if you do, it's contributed back to something that continues to perpetuate this. But for lack of a better answer, that would be it. It's a self-responsibility. Now to pass it on as I remember it, as clearly as I remember it. Yeah. Anybody else?
You kind of hinted at this when you said the words, it's better to be responsive rather than reactive. But what piece of advice do you have, or you, Ms. Graetz, for contemporary social movements? Things like Me Too, things like Black Lives Matter.
Again, the same thing. You got to educate. See, because everybody now is all into this, and you what I'm seeing now, and Ms. Graetz might agree with me, is you've got too many people now that want to be a leader. I'm the leader. They really want to be the next Martin Luther King. He didn't plan on being a leader. You see what I'm saying? None of them did. The situation was there, and they didn't just decide, I'm going to be the leader and go through it. This man studied Gandhi. You see what I'm saying? They studied. So in order for you, I don't care whether it's contemporary or not, a movement is a movement is a movement. And you'll see when I sign my book, I always sign, movement creates change. Because that applies to your human body, that applies to anything. If there is no movement, things remain stagnant. You see what I'm saying? So whatever it takes, but it has to be an informed, educated movement, depending on which way you want to go. You cannot not be a strong leader without good followers. You just cannot. You absolutely cannot. Because you'll find yourself just out there, and nothing is worse than a herd mentality. Mm-hmm. Nothing is worse than a herd mentality. There's no strength in that. There's no strength in that. Yeah. Anything else? One more? One more?
I was going to ask Mrs. Graetz as well. Like, you both talked about having to really and think over, like, when you were so angry that you didn't know, like, how to get past that. Was there, like, a special prayer or way of meditating that helped either of you get over some of that really, really difficult anger?
Just talking about it. Nothing special. I had no special prayer for me. I'm Catholic. So you go to church, say rosaries, whatever the case may be. And being in Catholic school, you automatically know how to deal with these kinds of things. And you also know that it's not normal for you. That it just wasn't a comfortable feeling. And that's what made me understand that this is hate. This is really hate. And you have taken it up to here that you can't take anymore. So you just, for me, it was just prayer. That, you know, I think Ms. Graetz mentioned the same thing. Did you say that? Prayer. Mm-hmm.
Any particular prayer, Ms. Graetz? Any particular
words?
Form of praying or meditation?
I don't think the form. We were always in prayer. We never did anything about praying about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And scriptures meant so much. You know, reading the scriptures, you read what's happening now.
And I want to go to Moran. You had a question earlier for Ms. Graetz?
Yeah, I actually did, and I was thinking about it right now. My question that I had for you was, with the beliefs that you and your husband had for equality and, you know, like that not being the norm for other white people at the time, I was just wondering, like, were you able to change anyone's hearts or minds, like other white people's hearts or minds that you were constantly around, like maybe your children's teachers or just people you constantly socialized with, like just from, you know, being who you are and them knowing that and like questioning you, like, I don't know. I'm just interested in that.
I can't really hear all that you said,
were you able
but
to change any white people, like in your communities, their hearts about the issue of racism?
well, one of the things that we found out is that you don't have to accept some of the things that somebody tries to say something to you, you know, negatively. you don't have to accept it that way. You can divert what they're saying to talk about it, because talking about it is, a lot different than people are throwing bad words at you or saying bad things. And there's a way you get so you can make them sorry they said that, or you can say, well, I don't agree with it, but you can have, that can be what you believe right now. Or, we've had some people in our family or in schools or different things, like places like that they want to make us feel bad because of what we were doing and putting our children through and all that. But you gotta not just take it personally. You've gotta. One of the things that we learned as we grew up and tried to teach our children: think before you say something or do something. You think what the consequences of it. If I say this, and you think of it in a hurry, if I say this, then this is going to cause something. So you can learn to say things softly, or it's hard to explain it, but as you grow up, as you mature, you can think about what would happen if you retaliated, and so you can divert it a little bit, and it's what I call nonviolence.
And I think your biggest enemy that your group is dealing with is social media. We can't even begin to tell you how to handle that. That's going to be on you. It really is. And I'm extremely excited about the millennials, because the millennials have the same mindset as the baby boomers. You really do. You really do. That's why we feel very comfortable knowing that you'll take charge and that we're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. But you really are the ones that have to deal with that bullying and all of this, and as you said, instant response. Just shut it off. Don't answer. Whatever the case may be. But I'm going to stop.
Well, we're all going to stop. I know that Mrs. Graetz has to get back to Reverend Graetz, and they have busy lives to continue with. Can we give them as big of a round? You will travel the world around and will find no finer people than are here today. If you want a book, if you want to look through the pictures, I know you want a hug and a picture, so let's do that quick.